organizations that provide services to our community, much like Jewish Family Service of Metropolitan Detroit. We're pleased to be joined now by their Chief Executive Officer, Perry Ohren, on the Oakland County Megacast. Perry, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate having you on. How are you? How's your team at Jewish Family Service doing?
Well, all things considered in the pandemic, we're doing what we need to be doing. We've never been closed. We're open for business, helping people left and right in different ways than we ever thought we'd be doing before.
For those that are unfamiliar, Perry, what does Jewish Family Service provide to the community?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So Jewish Family Service has been around for almost 100 years, 92 years, and we've evolved a lot over the years, of course. And we are basically a cradle to grave organization. There's three big buckets of service that we provide. The first big bucket is outpatient mental health counseling. So psychotherapy or behavioral health services, depending on how you want to call that. And of course, we're all doing that Zoom now. That's one big bucket, mental health services. The second big bucket of services that Jewish Family Service provides is what I'd call safety net services. So helping people navigate various service delivery streams if they're having hard financial times, whether it's to get queued up to the Department of Health and Human Services or to get some dollars from a rabbi, a priest, an imam, whatever. So we help people to try to make ends meet. That's the second big bucket of services, safety net services. The third big bucket of services is what I call older adult services. We help older adults who are our neighbors wherever we live to age in place in their homes, in single family homes, apartments, and condominiums. And as we all get older, as we know, we need more and more and more help, whether that's changing a light bulb or getting a home delivered meal or having someone come into the home to do home care. So all of those three big buckets and lots of programs and services underneath those three big buckets. And let me also say too, Jewish Family Service, we're Jewish and we're non-sectarian. So we certainly were founded to serve the Jewish community 100 years ago or so. And as we evolve, we are opening our doors to serve the whole broader community.
So as you mentioned, you have not stopped during the pandemic. Need is so great right now. What are you seeing an increase of in need out in the community during this time?
Right. So organizations like ours can't afford to close during a pandemic. We sort of have an inverse relationship to bad things like pandemics. So when pandemics happen, Jewish Family Service needs to get into hyperdrive. So there's an increase in need for all of the stuff that we are helping people with. So people obviously are having more trouble making ends meet. The second bucket of service I talked about, safety net services. Older adults are more socially isolated than ever. And probably that's the scariest piece of our business at this point, because who knows how long this is going to go on. But as a previous commercial I heard happening in between this and the last segment said older adults should be staying at home. So we're seeing an increase in that. And third, mental health counseling. So everybody on the planet is ostensibly more anxious than before, whether you had a previous diagnosis or not, a mental health concern. So everybody is looking for somebody to talk to, whether that's a professional or not. Mental health services are very much needed. So our whole entire business is being taxed as it should in these really, really, really hard times.
Perry Ohren with us. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish Family Service of Metropolitan Detroit. With us on the Oakland County Megacast. And Perry, we've done some work with the organization in the past at Civic Center TV and Lakes FM, covering some of the many classes that are also held for mental health services and so on at Jewish Family Services. Any of that continued on over the course of the pandemic, or any plans to provide those services going forward, maybe through virtual means, as that's also really critical to the community as people are learning how to deal with these issues and learning how to help their loved ones and other people that they're involved with as well.
So absolutely, we are still in the space of creating content to help people in these hard times, as well as to provide different types of classes, for instance, for family caregivers of people with chronic illnesses. For any of the list of services that we provide, you can go to jfsdetroit.org and peruse our offerings. But indeed, we and the rest of the world has sort of pivoted to try to figure out how not to offer things that we were doing in person to obviously do things in a format like this via Zoom or whatever makes sense for people telephonically or otherwise. So yes, we are still doing classes, holding people's hands who are going through hard times. And like I said before, whereas counseling used to be all face-to-face, three-dimensional, it's now two-dimensional through Zoom and reimbursable. We were able to bill third parties, Blue Cross, Medicare, Medicaid, and others. So we're still very much in that space and expect, as I said before, to be increasing the amount of business that will be coming our way in that space as we know that people need our help.
Volunteers are so important to your organization. How has that side been going for you? Fewer volunteers? You need more volunteers?
Yeah, so absolutely. I work in a workplace where there's about 120 employees, and there's roughly in any given year 1,000 or so volunteers doing various things, from helping us do clerical stuff to being friendly visitors to delivering Meals on Wheels, etc. And so there's the story there is there's a different need for volunteers than there was before. So while we're not doing as much face-to-face time. So we used to have friendly visitors, people like you and me, who'd go out to someone's grandma or grandpa's house to look through photo albums, to go out to Leo's for lunch, whatever people do. What we're now doing, of course, instead of that is sort of telephone reassurance or Zoom reassurance or FaceTime reassurance. So we're always looking for volunteers for that, because we know that older adults are locked in and need more connectivity to people like us. Also, the home delivered meals program that we do in connection with National Council of Jewish Women, that's more than doubled in the last many, many months. And so we're looking for more volunteers for our Meals on Wheels program to either pack meals or to deliver meals to older adults' homes.
Perry Ohren with us. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish Family Service of Metropolitan Detroit. Perry, for those who are at home right now, or those who are looking for something to get involved in the community, they may want to help and volunteer with Jewish Family Service and help with these essential services to the community. How can people get involved with Jewish Family Service if they fit in that category?
You can certainly inquire. Again, I'd steer people to our website or to the telephone number right behind me, 248-592-2313, and inquire about possibilities. There's more, as we'd all understand, there's more of a demand from volunteers to want to volunteer than we have the capacity to plug people into, but we're trying to create more volunteer opportunities because the generosity of people out there is huge, whether that generosity is sending us a check or wanting to volunteer or something different. So you can go to our website and look for volunteer opportunities, and then go to the right person that the website will steer you to, and we can hopefully shepherd a good experience or keep you in mind for other experiences that we're creating moving forward.
Perry, the need for these services you had mentioned before earlier on in the interview has increased in a time of struggle like this during a pandemic, and that's when organizations like yours have to step up and become more involved than they are in our normal times. But the pandemic's far from over, and then after the pandemic, there is the recovery from the pandemic. Do you imagine that your services are going to become even more critical than they have during the pandemic as we go forward?
Absolutely. So most of us are focused on yesterday, today, and tomorrow. People like me and many of my colleagues need to be focusing on the next 10 years. So I have as a frame of reference the 2008, 2009 recession, and many people are still recovering from that. So while we did lots of interesting work in 2008, 9, 10 to sort of help people get back on their feet, after 2010, for the next decade, arguably, we were still helping. So similarly, I know that Jewish Family Service and other organizations like Jewish Family Service will be helping people recover from this pandemic for decades to come. So we can't just be fundraising for today and tomorrow. We also have to be figuring out what does our infrastructure need to look like in 5 years from now, because people will be hurting for sure financially, as lots of businesses are closing or in the process of closing, and people will need help to make ends meet.
How challenging is it to try and fundraise right now? Because, like you said, businesses are hurting as well, but yet the need is greater for you.
It's very challenging. So while people want to be generous to us, and we exist on the generosity of a generous community, individuals are also sort of looking at their books to try to figure out whether they're going to be able to pay their rent, their mortgage. And so it's really hard to do fundraising in this environment. We're thankful, though, for lots of funds and foundation, places like the United Way, places like the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit, governmental dollars. So all of those machinery pieces are still functioning, although all of them, like the United Ways of the world, the federations of the world, are also trying to figure out, even though they've had some success in the short term raising additional dollars for COVID-19 relief, they're wondering what's their campaign going to look like next year, which will then have a trickle down, potentially bad, negative impact on places like Jewish Family Service. So the fundraising landscape is very challenging, and it will be very challenging for years to come as a result of this.
Perry Ohren with us, the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish Family Service, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Perry, anything else that would be interesting for our audience to know or important for our audience to know about your services? If there's somebody that is in need of these services, what are the ways that they can also reach out and have those provided to them by Jewish Family Service?
Sure. So Jewish Family Service is one organization amid many human service organizations in our Tri-County area in Southeast Michigan. And what I would say to people is that there is help out there, whether it's a Jewish Family Service or one of our sister organizations within the Jewish community or the broader community. I would encourage people to know that they can call on Jewish Family Service, or they could dial up 211, which is United Way's service, and sort of put out the situation, the problem that you are in, and hopefully there will be solutions at a place like Jewish Family Service. So many people don't know that there are resources. One thing that Jewish Family Service does in times like this is we help people navigate these somewhat complicated service delivery streams. So please call us, call 211, and we will try to help you in whatever way we can. If we're not the right organization for you, for whatever reasons, we will try to get you to the right organization, because there is help out there for people. We are a service-rich environment.
You do so much good, and before we let you go, just as this crisis continues on, can you talk a little bit about the importance of faith during this pandemic?
Sure. So while I am not a rabbi and Jewish Family Service is not a synagogue, I do believe that each one of us does plug into whatever faith, spirituality that we have, and the need for connectivity with other people and within ourselves is paramount if we're going to get through this. I know that everybody on the planet in a different way, shape, or form is struggling and wondering what's going to be like tomorrow and wondering when I could go back to normal, etc. So to me, faith, even though I'm not a faith leader, even though I lead a faith-based human service organization, faith and spirituality and connectivity is very important, in addition to the provision of things like human services that we do at Jewish Family Service.
Well, Perry, we thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Perry Ohren, the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish Family Service of Metropolitan Detroit, with us on the Oakland County Megacast.